welcome to something new I'm going to be trying to do, called Dungeon Discussions or something like that. Probably Dungeon Debates. I haven't thought of the name exactly just yet, but I've been seeing a lot of people on other streams and whatnot asking a question: how do I make my boss encounters more threatening? And I'm obviously not super popular, and I'm not the most experienced person out there when it comes to role playing, but I have been doing it for quite a few years, and I thought I would throw in my 2 cents. Now, what this tells me is that you are most likely not stacking the deck properly. Your tactics are not tactful enough. Because you could throw 1,000 enemies at your party, but if you're not doing it tactfully, it's just gonna be over. But sorry if I cough a lot. I'm a little sick, but I wanted to get this recording done today. I was planning on doing a PowerPoint thingy, but I'm still figuring out all of my stuff, so I'm not very tech savvy. So this lovely little PowerPoint I got done is not really available for you guys, but it will at least hopefully help me get across the points in which I am trying to make. Now, a lot of people, from what I can tell, they're not really using their quote-unquote bosses to their fullest extent. Oh, you got this, CR15, CR17 creature, whatever, but it's getting taken down in like 2 rounds. It's like, oh, well, the dice were with them. Then it happens again. And again. And again. Something's not clicking there. So, I thought I would help. I've broken it down into 3 things that could help. And I'm very bad at talking, so pardon me. Let's dive down into it. Get down to the nitty gritty. Your creature senses the environment and the condition in which they're fighting in. And are they using traps, or are they able to use traps? I find if you get a better understanding of these things, it will not only make it more difficult for your players, but they might actually, start taking some of those death saving throws if you're not too careful. But let's look into the first one, which is dark vision, and I'm just gonna put up some example art stuff as I talk, so I'm sure there are people out there that are better tech savvy than me, but just bear with me, please. So, dark vision, what does that do? It means that the area is lightly obscured by fog, or there's not a moon out, so it's very difficult to see. And while you are in this area, you get a +2 to your AC. So this Knoll Packlord right here, its normal AC is 15, as you can see, but if it were properly hidden in the dark, its AC is now 17, and that makes it a lot harder to hit. And then, not to mention, your players now have disadvantage on their perception throws. Take a drink. So, how are you using this? As a lot of creatures have dark vision. Like, obviously not all of them, because that would be weird. I mean, what would be the point of even putting it in if everything has it? But a lot of monsters in the monster manual do have dark vision, and your party members will most likely be prepared for this to an extent. But I will get into that. All right. So we've got, your traditional who, what, when, where, how, blah 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 blah. First, the first question you should be asking yourself is, why is it dark? Is it a magical darkness, as my phone is going off? But anyway, is it a natural occurring darkness, or is it magical? And most often not, it's probably going to be natural. So, expect, your party members to have a light source of some sort, either by a magical light or a torch or something. The creatures themselves will most likely, if they are intelligent enough, will be able to come up with some sort of plan to deal with that. I'll get into that here in a second. And then, how are the players coping? Again, are they using a flame torch, or are they using a light spell? This makes a huge difference. Why? Because the torch can go out, or it can do all sorts of other stuff. Whereas a light spell is a little bit more tricky, but it doesn't mean that it's not impossible to snuff out their light if the creature in question is smart enough for it. Because a lot of your quote-unquote bosses are going to have at least a decent tactical intelligence of some degree, most likely. What are the creature's reaction to the light? I mean, do they flee away? Do they stay out of that 30-foot radius and attack from a distance? Attack and move, attack and move. It makes it very difficult for the party members if all of a sudden they're being peppered with arrows and the creature is staying within that dim light radius, but not within the bright light. Who is producing light? Is it your paladin or knight holding the torch again? Or is it the mage? You should probably factor that in when you're coming up with your boss strategies, because your knight can take a hit, but if you're not one, but your wizard, not so much. So I mean, it's something to keep in consideration, as the person who is producing light is almost guaranteed to be the first one to be attacked if you're using your creatures to their full extent. And then what I miss one. Wait, this isn't a type of this, but what happens when the light goes out? Are you just gonna have a lot of more baddies close the distance and maul a single party member to death? Or the party members are now in a big disadvantage here, especially with something like the Gnoll Pack Lord, who as a reaction can make other creatures with the rampage ability charge in and attack. And with those multi-attacks it has there, that's no joke to be messing around with. Okay. So yeah, like, you should probably ask yourself about that. Those kinds of questions. Because I mean, if it's dark and your mage casts light so that they can see, well, what does that do? It makes it so that everything around them can see them. And then what are you doing with that? Are you just gonna let them sit there and, traipse about the dungeon that most creatures prefer it to be dark in, or does it attract more? In all honesty, it would most likely attract the more vicious creatures because they're like, ooh, pretty glittering prey. Alright, that's that. Okay, let's go to blind sight. Let me switch my scene thing. So sorry about the bad images here, guys. I kind of wanted to make some stuff clear here, which I will get to in a second. Back to my thingy. So a creature with blind sight, it does not see, so it relies mostly on hearing and smell, most likely, and anything within its detailed thing. The helm tour here, for an example, its blind sight is 60 feet, so it can see in a radius of 60 feet around it and doesn't need actual eyes. These kinds of creatures are very hard to deal with, in my opinion, because it's like, oh, you're gonna fight something that lives in the dark. Well, that's great, but what are you gonna do when you're fighting something that can fight you in the pitch blackness, and you're scrambling just to make some light, and it's already taking a few hits out of you? How does it fight? Does it just swing wildly, or is it like the Helmtor here, who actually is a tactician? I mean, it's up there in the part that got cut off, so I'm sorry. I kind of wanted to get the stats here more visible than the thing. But again, like, how does it fight? Does it swing wildly at anything within its grasp? Does it target a specific creature or whatever? And then who does it target? Again, more or less, is it going to go after the squishy mage, or is it going to take the challenge of the guy covered in plate mail? And then why does it target them? Again, a lot of these creatures with blind sight, from what I've seen, not all of them are highly intelligent creatures, and they don't just attack at random. So it's like you got three, let's say shield and sword fighters, and you got a ranger and a mage. Well, it's gonna take out the ones that seem to be the weakest within its vision, which would most likely be the ranger and the mage. Most likely to deal with support and all that. Now, what I found is with the blind sight creatures is that they are usually protecting something, so they usually attack with pretty good ferocity. Taking a drink, excuse me. It burns. Again, like a lot of creatures, they're protecting gems or whatever, but I don't know. I can't really edit this, so there's gonna be lots of ums and then me second guessing a lot of my questions. I do apologize. I do know what I'm talking about. I'm just really bad at putting words together and explaining myself. I'm trying to make this entertaining. I really am. I'm sorry, guys. When should it attack? Because, again, like a spider, it's not just going to attack any. It's not just like bursting out of the walls. Come at me, bro. It's going to stealth and sneak, and it's going to your bosses are going to do everything in their power to make the playing field as uneven as possible. So that means they're going to ambush you. They're going to attack your squishies. honestly, for the most part, would most likely leave your berserkers, your warriors, and whatnot. They leave them for last. At least in my opinion. Unless if they're enticing enough. But, you can attack the guy that has, hacking away with a longsword, or you're going to kill the guy that just took out 3 minions, like 3 plus minions with a fireball. I'd be taking out the guy that's taking out more of your minions. But, that's just me. That's my thingy. Alright, now I'm trying to make this fast so you guys don't get bored. I'm not a particularly fast talker, so I do apologize if, I'm hard to listen. But here's the next one, this lovely little worm here. Actually, let me go back to the helm tutorial real fast. Because, what I would like you guys to look at is, I'm going to talk about this in a bit further up too, but I'd like to get some of it done right now. I'm horrible at organizing. You heard it here first. You got your damage resistances. You can ignore that. Your damage immunities and your condition immunities are going to be instrumental in making the party sweat. Because, alright. You can set up traps and make the environment a lot more dangerous with the damage immunities. Or, your condition immunities can, take out a good chunk of your spells, as it were. It's like, oh, can't be charmed, can't be poisoned, can't be deafened or frightened, petrified, stunned. If you don't necessarily need to have a condition or a damage immunity, but if you play to their strengths, this can tip the scales as well. So it's always something to keep in mind. Alright, and back to the purple worm picture. Look at that beauty. Someone's going to get eaten there, I can guarantee you that. We're going to be talking about tremor sense as I find my slide here. Okay. This one's a little bit different when it comes to sense, because again, the creature has to be heavy enough to make the vibrations in the ground to, alert the creature in the first place. But these creatures are in the opposite order. They're not going to go after your mage or your ranger or your rogue, at least at first, mainly because they're not the ones making the noise. It's the guy covered in plate mail. It's the paladin. It's your berserker. These people wielding these massive swords, swinging around, yelling and stomping and all that. So it makes it a little bit different in that sense, but it's still pretty much the same concept. An interesting question here that you should be asking yourself is, what is the size of the field that you're fighting in? If you have a purple worm, as an example, and it can't really do anything, it can just pop out of this one area and attack the party members, you don't want to restrict movement. It's not a smart worm because it's a worm, but it's still going to want to move around. It's not just going to sit there and strike the party. It's going to attack with its bite, then it's going to attack with a stinger, then it's going to burrow underground. And this is something that you should always take in consideration, because if you just have it sit there, it's going to get hit a lot. Let me actually look up the AC for this thing real fast. I got some markers. Well, not markers, because I don't like damaging my books, but I got a book holder. So yeah, armor class 18. It's hard to hit. 247 hit points. It can take a lot of them. But again, like if you have 4, 5, 6 characters, you're looking at a shit ton of damage output per round. And like they could easily eat through that, especially if 2 or 3 of them get a crit. Now, obviously, a low-level party fighting a purple worm, that is a death sentence, but it's just an example. Oh, that hurt. But again, with creatures with tremor sense, you don't want them to just sit there and take a hit. You want to attack and move, attack and move, attack and move. Like, they're not going to just sit there and let you hit on them. And whatnot. Another thing to ask is yourself, which you don't even really, it will be important, but it's not likely to come up as often because a lot of people don't like this, but are there any flyers on the team? Are any of your players that bird character or whatever, or they turn themselves into an owl or something and they're flying? You should be asking yourself, what is the boss's reaction to suddenly losing or is being attacked by something that it cannot sense? Because I mean, if you take down two targets, but like there's the rest of the team is up in the air or something, and the purple worm is just getting peppered, it's not just gonna stay there. It can feel those hits. So sometimes you do have to do a tactical retreat, which I mean, it's not a bad thing. Alright, that's my purple. Okay. Now we're getting into the second part. I have no idea how long this video is. Says it's been going for 22 minutes. Wow, really? I'm trying to make this fast, guys. I really am. I'm sorry. But let's talk about the environmental, conditions and the housing of the boss and whatnot. Are you putting your boss in daylight, pretty much? There's no sort of cover. There's no clearings. There's no anything. It's like, are you pretty much, don't drop the mic. Are you pretty much just putting them in a coliseum and having the players wail on them? I mean, if you are, it's not the best way to do it, in my opinion. But a great thing to do is change the landscape to benefact the boss. Again, taking in consideration the purple worm. If it's churning all of this soil and hard rock around it in its burrow, like the book says that it makes a 10-foot hole, but again, what is the condition of the ground? Because I mean, if this thing has been doing this for a really long time, that the ground is going to be sand. Like, it's just going to be very, very loose soil and sand, and when it goes back under, it's just going to make a dent in the ground. And your players aren't going to just like, oh, I jumped down there and attack it. I mean, if you want them to do that, you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you're in a cave, stalactites and stalactites are a wonderful thing to use because they provide cover. So if you're tiny, you can hit and move, and in the dark, see where things are starting to get. You're in pitch blackness, and you are attacking from the dark and moving behind stuff, so that not only if they can't see you in the dark, you've already got +2 to your AC. And if I remember, if you have half cover or whole cover or something like that, you get like an additional +2 to your AC. So something small that generally has a low AC score. Let me go to one of my examples here. Not that one. Yeah, let's just go to a goblin. Your AC of 15 is now like an AC of 19. And the party members have disadvantage, so they are almost never going to hit. So those goblinoids, those helmed horrors, those clawing claws, they're suddenly a lot more dangerous because they have cover. Another thing, if the creature has some moderate degree of intelligence, like to the point of a peasant or something, they're going to have, precautionary defenses set up. They're going to have, those spiked barricades to funnel in the party members. They're going to have those traps set up, which I'm about to talk about. They're going to have an escape route plan. They're going to have all sorts of stuff. They might have underground burrows. Like they might pop down into a hole like in the Vietnam War and have underground tunnels and just move around underneath while you're desperately trying to find them. And then how does their environment benefit them, which is what I've pretty much been talking about in this entire thing. But it's a very simple but very crucial thing to ask yourself is, what is my battlefield looking like? Because it should benefit the boss greatly. If you're putting them on even ground with your party members, it's going to be a slaughter fest and not in your favor. Even if they're humans. The bosses, not the players. Alright, let's go to this one. This lovely little Minotaur skeleton, which gets me into like special conditions that could be set within your dungeon. So like we're going back to those damage immunities, guys, that I was talking about prior. Like, say your party members are slaughtering a lot of skeletons, but they're out in the open, there's nothing there. The fact that they are immune to poison should be a really good way to, I guess you could say, turn the tides, as it were. Because now your players are having to make constitution saves, or else get poisoned by like gas. Like, let's say the maze is filled with gas, or this antechamber is just spewing this green noxious gas like sulfur or something. You now not only have your party members having to make a con save at the start of each of the rounds, your skeletons are like, the area is now blinded, so it is heavily obscured by the gas, and which means that your skeletons would get like an AC bonus, and they're covered, I think. I mean, if you put like stalactites or broken furniture or some like giant piles of corpses in there, you could use that if need be. Now all of a sudden you have this skeleton minotaur thing charging at you through the mist at your party. You get hit and then it's gone back into the fog before you can even do anything. And I mean, with like a minotaur skeleton, that would be absolutely devastating, especially if it has like advantage or something, because of the charge ability. Yeah, if a skeleton moves at least 10 feet straight toward a target and then hits it with a gore attack, On the same turn, the target takes an extra 2d8 piercing damage. If the target is a creature, it must succeed a DC 14 strength saving throw or be pushed up to 10 feet away and knocked prone. This is a very devastating, tactical maneuver. Because, alright, the Gore does 2d8 plus 4 damage on its own. So if you're attacking one party member, they are getting hit with 48 plus 4 damage, which is a lot, and they are being knocked prone most likely. If they are knocked prone, they might have a disadvantage on their Constitution saving throw, because the gas would most likely be really heavily concentrated on the ground. And if your skeleton were to crit, you're doing 8d8 damage plus 4, so you could doing the math, that's 68 points of damage with a single hit, possibly. And that's a CR2 challenge rating, guys. So just by putting in that one scenario, unless you're like ridiculously high leveled, you're getting your players are dying. I can almost guarantee you. In that anti-chamber, especially if they can't escape. Another example, Magma Pits, which brings me to my next one. Little magma in them. This is if you want to be a dick, essentially. Like, they're in a cavern and all of a sudden there's pools of magma all around them. You could have these guys pop in and out of it. They're fully covered by the magma. They are completely obscured, so they have a +2 AC and all that stuff. So actually, really like +4. Go to my thing here. So yeah, it would then go from an AC of 14 to an AC of 18. It's immune to fire. Obviously, because you're having it pop out of magma. And then, it pops in, hits the player, dies back down. Like that. And if it hits them, they are set on fire, and they stay on fire until they use an action to put it out. Which, that alone is bad enough, but then you get the whole death burst little thing with the magman. When the magman dies, it explodes in a burst of fire and magma. Each creature within 10 feet of it must make a DC 11 dexterity saving throw, taking 2d6 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. Flammable objects that aren't being worn or carried in that area are ignited. That could be very devastating, especially if you have it affect the area too. So this bridge of brimstone that the party's on suddenly takes some damage, and now those pools of magma got bigger. So it's again like a very low level, low hit point, supposedly easy creature to kill. All of a sudden, used right, is, or at least in my opinion, a good way to use them, I should say, is possibly taking out a 4th, 5th, maybe even a 6th or 7th level party, if there's a lot of them. Not even a lot of them, really. But, because if they fall in the lava, they're gonna die. So, you should always make sure that the environment tips the scale. It doesn't have to be by much, actually, but it should be. Your players should never, ever, ever be on equal footing with your boss. Ever. And you don't have to apply all of these things in order to, make a more challenging thing. I'm just showing you some examples of what I do. As my throat is burning. My goblins like goblin pickies. All right, but those were just a few examples of possible environments you can use. Obviously, if your creature has jumping or flying speed, you add elevations like high perch points or like dead drops into like a chasm or something. Or if it's out in the sea, it can do deep dives or make waves and try and throw people off of the boat if that's what's happening. The next one is traps. We're almost done, guys. I swear, because my throat won't let me talk for much longer. Traps are your best friend if you don't want to just crank up, maximum hit points or make a new creature that's, oh, I fuse a red dragon with a basilisk and now it has a stone breath attack that's like 30 feet and like a 30 feet cone or something like that. You don't need to do that to make deadly encounters. You don't need that to do that to make difficult encounters. Honestly, I mean, just changing the terrain so that it's difficult for the players and advantageous for the boss is more than enough. You don't... I mean, it really is. But back to traps. This is more of the not even highly intelligent, but the human-esque level of intelligence. Goblins are not. They can just swarm, a caravan. But all right, let's say they do that and they get slaughtered and one survives. That one goblin has enough intelligence to realize, oh, that did not work. Let's try something different. And then, like, they see, a guard on horseback has a torch on the next one, and like let's say dump oil all over them, like all over the caravan, and all of a sudden they are all lit on fire and panicking and having to spend a turn taking fire damage and putting out the fires and whatnot, while the goblins could now swarm with advantage because they can get into tactical range, or just pepper them with arrows. I mean, it's a very simple thing to do if they're carrying a flaming torch or something. If they're carrying something that has light on them, here's where I was getting to earlier. Let's say you got a party like 4 or 5, and in the center is your mage, and they have light cast so that they can walk through the dark forest. Well, what happens then? Because they can see, right? Well, your goblins could throw powder grenades, make the area that you guys are fighting in obscured, and then again pepper them with arrows, or drop falling rocks on them, or trigger a tiger trap and have them get impaled from below in a pit. And your traps don't always have to deal damage. I mean, let's say you're in the jungle and you're fighting Yuan-Ti, those snake people. Well, a good trap for them, an example, could be a bear trap. Something that just stops your movement for an instant so that they can close the distance, constrict, and now you're screwed. Or be like, oh no, I'm getting attacked, da 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 da, He's like, I'm gonna run away. Oh no, I triggered a bear trap. I'm stuck. Help me, guys. We're on our way. And then gulp. You get swallowed or something. And this actually kind of brings me up to one of my points here on my PowerPoint that you guys cannot see, unfortunately. I do apologize. I'm still learning my programs and whatnot. How many would your bosses place if they are going to use traps? You don't want it to be so many that it's just ridiculous. You're not going to have like 30 bear traps, 40, urns of oil, and like a flaming sphere or something. Because, then it's not, oh, we must kill the boss. It's, oh, we must avoid the traps that are going to kill us. And then the party member is probably just going to be mad. Especially if they get hit with all three at once. You want to be moderate with it. You want it to make it so that your boss is the one that's dealing the damage. All the trap is supposed to do is either disrupt the party's movements or cancel their benefactories. If they're using light, find a way to put it out. Bucket of water, mud, tar. There's a good one. Especially because that could work for both your flaming torch and your light. I'd feel bad for, the mage if something on their headpiece is what's lighting up and they get hit with, molten tar or something. Nasty business there. But again, guys, these are just my thoughts and opinions. I'm going to go to my last thing. It's just a picture I found a while back. It's really cool. You don't have to use all of these, guys. You don't even necessarily... You should, in my opinion, ask yourself how deadly are you wanting this encounter to be. If your party members are slaying something that you want it to last at least 2, 3, 4 rounds, something hard, but you don't want to increase the difficulty by just raising its hit points so that it can just take more hits. That's not a good way to go about it, guys. You want your environment to be advantageous for your boss, while being at the same time disadvantageous for the players, but not to the point that it's just absurd and they're horribly underprepared. You want to make sure that your bosses and other enemies have defenses in place if they are smart enough for, like light or being blinded. Well, not blinded. I would most likely suggest light, just because there's so many creatures that attack at night, and the intelligent ones are gonna have some sort of way to fight it, because they want to win. They want to eat your succulent, sweet human meat. Put it in their stew. Make your bones into the bread. On all that stuff. I really hope my music is going through, guys. My meter thing is not moving. Oh, there it goes. It's just probably just a soft spot. But, again, don't be trap heavy. Use traps, but don't abuse traps. I'd say, honestly, no more than 5. Like, you want... Like, if you're setting traps just within the boss encounter zone, I would say, around 5-ish. 1 per party member. But that's only if it's like a small trap or something. If it's like a big trap, like, falling rocks or something, obviously just 1 would do. And don't use the traps to be the final, the final blow, the coup de grace. I mean, it should always, your boss should always be the one dealing the most damage. We are almost at 50 minutes here, which I figured would be around the time because I ramble a lot. We got traps, we got in the environment, we got the senses. If you ask yourself how the boss deals with these to give themselves the advantage and how they defend those set advantages, you'll not only find that your encounters are much more difficult, but your players will most likely have a lot more fun if they're there to, be murder hobos. Just remember not to go overkill, and I would not suggest doing all of these and then on top of it giving your boss max hit points. I would strongly discourage that. You're not trying to win at D&D. You're trying to make it so that your players have to use every trick in the trade book, every possible thing, come up with new ideas. You want them on the edge of their seats trying to think, but not. I mean, if the party gets TBK'd, the party gets TBK'd, but it should not be because you stack the deck 52 to 1. It's like, oh, we got the ace of hearts. Yeah, well, I got all the other cards in the deck, or something like that. It's supposed to be challenging, as my Skype just notified me. Okay, I will look at that later. And notified me again. Well, at least it's at the end and not like at a critical point. Shut up. But again, guys, yeah, it's all about keeping them suspense, but not, suspended. If don't forget, if you try this out and you're like, oh no, mid battle, in one turn 3 of my player characters just drop down to 0 or are now at in the single digits in hit points. They don't know your boss's hit point levels. They don't know how many traps there are. It can be adjusted. Just make sure you remember where you adjust it at. It's like, if your party's taking a real bad beating, but you don't want to lower the hit points of your boss, just make a trap disappear, or make something happen that gives them a slight boost or something. Maybe a powder keg goes off in the distance and now everything's on fire and you can see clearly, and now it's difficult terrain for everybody, including the boss or something. I mean, get creative. Just have fun. Right, well, this thing is incredibly long, so I think I'm going to stop here now. I hope this was entertaining and educational for you guys. I plan on doing more of these in the future. I don't have a time schedule for them. They're just going to come to me when they come to me. Any thoughts, tidbits, criticisms, just leave them down in the comment sections below. I mean, we're here to learn, guys. Learn, have fun, and be murder hobos. To a degree. But for now, and forever, stay tuned to the terror.